now joined on the line by Glenn Anton Rivers, more fondly known as Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, as we know, has a legendary basketball career, both in playing and management, and it's a great honour to have him on the show for all our Irish basketball fans and enthusiasts all over the country. Glenn, basketball, it's been so iconic with your career, over 40 years as a player and as a coach. Starting off as a youngster, was that always the main goal, to be in the NBA, to be a professional basketball player? And did you ever see yourself doing anything else?
Well, yeah, I've always wanted to be. This is what I grew up as a kid. I had an uncle named Jim Brewer who played in the NBA, and so it kind of gave me a dream that I could make it if my uncle could make it, same neighborhood. So it's really something that I wanted to do. Never thought I would coach. I just wanted to be a player. And then after finishing my playing career, I started getting the coaching bug, and I've actually coached now longer than I've played.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc, as we looking at your career as well, you in 1982 you played in relation to USA, led them to silver medal in the FIBA World Championship, drafted by the Atlanta Hawks in 1983, formed a formidable partnership with Dominique Wilkins, and then you played for the Clippers, who you're now with, the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs, and having that sort of long, sort of lengthy career in the NBA, it must have set you up in relation to knowing all the finer inner details that it takes to be a successful coach. And when you finished up as a player after having all that success, did you want to take time off? Did you want to go away from NBA or basketball and maybe take time with your family, or was it always the idea to jump back straight in there when the opportunity came about?
No, it was I did take a break. I did 3 years of TV after I finished, and I really thought the separation was really important for me. And when you named all those places that I played, I was very lucky. I played for some great coaches. I played for Larry Brown and Pat Riley, Mike Fratello. So I've always been coached by really good coaches, and I thought that helped me become a better coach as well.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc, your first chance came about with the Orlando Magic, and how did that come about?
Well, it's interesting. Chuck Daly, who is no longer with us, and Hall of Fame coach, took a liking to me, really wanted me to get into coaching. He had me come join your training camp the year before and just observe as a coach. During that season, he announced his retirement. The Magic then called me and offered me the coaching job. I'd never been a coach, ever. And they gave me the head coaching job, which was a huge risk for them, but it turned out okay.
Yeah, and I suppose you went into Orlando, a sort of Magic sort of franchise, and the big name at the time was Grant Hill, a sort of legendary Magic sort of icon, and Tracy McGrady then came on the books as well, and having sort of two superstars as a coach starting off, especially Grant Hill was a well-established superstar at that stage. How did you find maybe to manage those sort of elite players from an early stage in your coaching career, and to get that right chemistry between the elite players, the Tracy McGrady's, the T-Max, the Grant Hill, to the rest of the squad?
Well, it was important to get everyone to know that it was about winning, number one. You treat everyone, you never treat everyone the same. Anyone that says everyone gets treated the same, that's not true. But you treated them in accordance with what was best for the team. And I thought that everyone kind of enjoyed being treated that way early on. They knew every decision I made was what's good for the team. And so I thought everyone fit. Unfortunately for us, Grant was injured most of the time. He had that bad foot injury with us and really never played a lot. But, it would have been special to have had him and Tracy for a long time. I thought we really could have made some special things in Orlando.
Yeah, and you were there for 4 seasons and you won the Coach of the Year in 2000, and you came so close to making that first big three sort of combo. Tim Duncan, nearly giant G, a three that would have rivaled Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook and James Harden when they were in OKC. And that sort of idea, having those two, maybe three superstars, and having Tracy McGrady at the time, probably my all-time favourite player, who was on the magnitude of when he was fresh, he was up there with Kobe Bryant, and even on his day when Tracy was special, he was even better than Kobe in many a days.
Yeah, I mean, Tracy was a special guy, and could do everything. He was more than just an offensive player. He was a great defensive player as well. And, we were close. We were close to getting Duncan. We got Grant, but Grant never got healthy. So, a little bit of misfortune. And in all sports, when you have the injury bug, it's tough to win.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc Rivers, you then moved on to the Boston Celtics in 2004, and sort of an iconic, legendary period came in the NBA, the basketball that time, the great rivalries between Boston and LA, and some epic sort of encounters. But you sort of established there an iconic team, and we know Boston, such a fantastic franchise, the likes of Larry Bird, such great players. But you pulled together a team of Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, Kevin Garnett, and bit by bit you put the pieces of all that team together. And when you started off, I suppose there were some pieces there, but how did you get about putting your own stamp on that franchise?
Well, we knew when I took the job there that we needed to rebuild. And we started out with Paul Pierce, and then Danny drafted Rajon Rondo, and then we made the trade and got Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. And, that team was obviously a championship team, but what I think stood out about that team is the way they played together as a team, worked together. And I don't know if there's ever been a championship team that played harder game in and game night than that team. And that was just a pleasure to work with those guys.
And I suppose, Doc Rivers, that Boston Celtic team, it was well run. It was a well-run iron machine. And most importantly of all, it was a playoff team. That team produced time after time in the playoffs, and it came up big that you had leaders. You could go to Paul Pierce, he could get hot, he could go for 20 points in a quarter. If Paul wasn't hot, then Kevin Garnett under the baskets could explode for 30 points, and then you had Ray Allen dropping trees outside the dime. So you had so many weapons and so many arsenals to attack teams.
Yeah, that's what you had. And we were great on both ends. It was a great defensive team, but offensively you could attack so many ways. And, Rondo was such a great orchestrator for that team as well. I mean, he was the perfect point guard for that basketball team because we have the three guys who were really offensive-minded, and Rondo was more pass-first-minded. I thought he was the perfect fit for that team.
Yeah, and I suppose you achieved that great success in 2008, winning the NBA championship and going into the NBA finals in that sort of game with those sort of experienced players, and maybe the first time in a long time you were seen probably as favourites, and the pressure was on Boston to deliver a sort of championship. And as a coach coming up, you have an elite team, you have an elite sort of locker room, elite sort of mentality. Did you ever question or doubt 1 second that you weren't going to win that series or to beat the Lakers, or do you always felt?
We never let our guys think that they were not going to win. We wanted them to believe that they were going to win. That there's a difference between being confident and cocky. We were a very confident team, but we also respect and have the right respect for our opponent. But we believe we were going to win, and that was very important.
Yeah, and I suppose before I bring you on to the Clippers, Doc, and I know you want to talk about this as well, at that time as well you faced a Lakers team under the magical powers of Kobe Bryant, for example. And tell me, as a coach, you're there in a series, how do you plan to minimise Kobe? Do you know that, well, Kobe's going to get so many certain points, it's what we do and how we get more than Kobe, or do you have to have a plan for Kobe Bryant?
Yeah, you have to have a plan, and we had a couple of plans. The one plan was guard him one-on-one. If he scores, great, but no one else can score. The other one was double team him and take his scoring away and know that make other people step up. And we went from game to game. We kept changing exactly what we were going to do, and I thought it was very effective.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc, all eras and all great teams and all great things, they have their time cycle, and the time and the writing was maybe for Boston to move different ways and for players to move on adventures. And yourself, you found yourself moving to the Clippers, a team that you played under, and again, sort of a rebuilding sort of job you were faced, but you had great weapons to start off with in relation to Chris Paul, and bit by bit you brought those star names, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. And did you feel you were forming that big three or that big four again, like you were doing in Boston?
Yeah, I was hoping that was the case. I actually looked at it as a very similar case. The difference was that I thought Kevin and Paul and Ray, they were ready to win. They were willing to sacrifice whatever it took to win. And then when we got to the Clippers, they were still very young. And, we just mentally wasn't ready to win yet. We had the talent, I thought. We were not a very deep team like we were in Boston. That Boston team was very deep. The Clipper team wasn't that deep.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc, as well, a proud moment for any father is when his son enters the league, and Austin entered the league, and the chance then came about for Austin to come and play under you. And as a father, first you want your son to excel in everything, and as a coach then you're interested in team. And how was it, that sort of dynamic, having your son in the locker room and the dressing room, and also wanting him to be the star player of the team as well, as a father would like?
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought of him as a star player, so that was the easy part. I knew he was just going to be a role player on our team. It was great. We had our ups and downs at times. I thought Austin, he got criticized far more than he should have because he was my son, but he handled it very well. And overall, when you look at what Austin did as a player with the Clippers, he had a great run for us. He made us a better team, and that's all you needed. For me as a father, it was just a really cool moment to be able to coach your son.
Yeah, and I suppose with Clippers as well, you were able to bring in Paul Pierce came back to you. We know Josh Smith was such a lethal enforcer at his time with Atlanta Hawks, and those sort of players came to the Clipper, and you were building that sort of backbone with all those sort of experience. But there's a time then where you're spending so much in a roster to have all these elite players that you have to decide maybe to go down a different road. And how hard was that when you found out that maybe Paul, Josh Smith, these boys that you're hoping on them, and it didn't go away, and you have to say, right, we need to go down a different route again? That must be hard, because you probably Paul's time had come and you were hoping that Paul could relive all his Boston moments with you, the Clippers, as well.
Yeah, Paul was just older at the time, and so what was disappointing is not the Paul part, it's just that we couldn't get over the hump and win. And then you had to make a choice at some point. Are we going to keep doing this, or do we need to reshuffle? And we decided to reshuffle, which I thought was the right decision.
And I suppose, Doc, looking into 2018, an upcoming season, I know you're full of optimism as well, but you sort of look at the Clippers now and your own team, as do you find yourself maybe in the same shoes as what Greg Popovich is going through? So, Greg Popovich now rebuilding a Spurs team without Tony Parker, without Tim Duncan, without Manu Ginobili. It feels eerie, it feels almost a complete different Spurs team, and you're the same now with Clippers, with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, gone, both two elite coaches, yourself and Greg Popovich, so many famous battle launch years. Do you almost feel it eerie that you're both sort of in the same shoes going into the 2018 season?
Yeah, we both are in very similar situations. We both expect success out of this new group, but we also both know that we're rebuilding and we're trying to reshuffle and make it back to the promised land, and then that means winning it again somehow.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc, looking at 2018, you are in the Western Conference as well. It's probably in a stacked elite Western Conference. Do you almost feel like if you're your Clippers, the playoffs are the main aim and to go run in the playoffs, but do you look sometimes with envy on the Eastern Conference and saying, if we were over there in the Eastern Conference, we could be challenging maybe for a conference final? You see how steep the Western Conference is compared to Eastern Conference, or is that just fate and the way the basketball fortunes have turned around in this decade that the Western Conference seems so much heavier than the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, it's just the way the basketball bounces. You don't worry about it. I think every coach in the West thinks that at times, like, man, it would be great to be in the East.
Yeah.
But listen, there were years and years and years where the East was the most dominant conference and the West was not that strong. It's the era for the West right now. You have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I suppose, Doc, I know I'm pushing you for time, but last question there, I suppose, looking ahead for the 2018 season with the Clippers as well. You see all off trading in the summer, and you see the likes of Boogie Cousins going to Golden State Warriors, and they probably have a top 5 that most teams would die for, that rival even's better than the Bulls starting 5, you could say, when the Bulls were so dominant. And then you see teams picking players and do you feel sort of feel that the basketball gods have sort of cheated away, that there should be a stop to this mandatory of teams, or do you think it's just good business by the Golden State that they're able to do what they do?
I think it's good business. I think they've formed a great franchise, and what it does to me, it raises the stakes for all the other franchises. We have to do it well. We have to try to do things that they're doing and do it better. And so it's a challenge to me for the rest of the league to get better.
Yeah, and Doc Rivers, have you ever been to Ireland? And lastly, what would you say to all the Irish basketball fans who tune into the NBA week in, week out, and who have followed your career and who have seen so many of your successes with the Boston Celtics, for example? And what would you say to those? Have you ever been to Ireland? And what would you like to say lastly to your Irish fans?
Well, let me start with first. I'd like to thank all the Irish fans for just being great fans. Not only just in basketball, but in sports in general. The way you guys support football and the way you guys support golf, it's just absolutely amazing. I've not been. I've been as far as Scotland. I think I'm going to Ireland next year or the year after. We have a golf trip planned, so I'm looking forward to coming over.
Doc Rivers, for me, Jim Conlan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the airwaves this evening. As we look back at an historic career, both as a player and as a manager, we wish you all the success for the LA Clippers in 2018 and beyond, and whatever future projects and endeavours you take on. Doc Rivers, for me, Jim Conlan, take care, my friend.
Thanks, Jim.
Cheers. Thank you, Doc. Bye.